Hey guys, Husheng here. Today we're going to be talking about the Zerg vs Zerg matchup, which for many people I think can be a pretty frustrating matchup. If you're new to the channel, I'm a Grandmaster with all three races, so you know you're going to get some good tips in this video. And we're going to be focusing specifically on one of the major themes in ZVZ, the Roach versus the Muta player. Two contrasting styles kind of battling it out. And we're going to be focusing on the Roach side of things. So throughout this video, if you can give me maybe 15 minutes of your time, we're going to make you a master at dealing with mutas. So in today's guide, we're going to be covering quite a bit about how to deal with mutas as the Roach player. We're going to be talking about how to identify the mutas, what you're looking for, what are the key signals. And then after that, we're going to be talking about how to react to these mutas, which things you want to be getting, what to prioritize, how to be kind of conceptualizing this. And then after that, I got quite a few more tips, sort of giving you an idea of what to focus on once you get safe, where you're going to be teching, you know, how to think about your position relative to the Mutalisk player, and many more things. So let's get into this replay. This is a game I played against a Master 1 Zerg, and we are actually the red player. Let's go over here. So, okay, we'll watch from my vision, I think. And I'm starting out with a pretty normal opening, so I'm going to be going for a 13 Overlord, a 16 Hatchery, 18 Gas, 17 Pool. I'm going to be talking about some of the basics of ZVZ at the beginning of this video, so if you're, you know, Diamond, or maybe Masters only actually, just skip ahead like a couple minutes. But there's a couple key things you want to be doing early on in ZVZ, so it's important that if you're maybe below Diamond, you pay close attention here, because these early components are really going to help you later on in the game, especially to be safe. So your first Overlord, I have two Overlords going across the map. This first one is going to go straight to the natural. And this is really important, because if you don't send this Overlord straight away, in fact, do it as fast as you can at the beginning. Make your drone and immediately send that Overlord, because the faster you get it across, the faster you know they're not cheesing you. And the main signal we're looking for is the creep. So you want this Overlord to get to your opponent's base and see their creep spread, and as long as it's started at the same time as yours, then you know that they're playing a hatch first build. So that's what you want to be doing with this first Overlord. The second Overlord is also pretty important. Oftentimes in the other matchup, you'll sit that second Overlord somewhere in this area to look for early pressures, but in Zerg versus Zerg, that's not really important. So the second Overlord is going to have another very important job. It's going to be sitting outside this third base location, and it's going to be watching for any lings that are leaving this area, and it's also going to be watching for a hatchery that comes down. Now, there's two other paths, 3 total. 1, 2, 3. And these paths are all very important to watch. So this first Overlord's going to come back, and he's going to be watching these two paths. This will be slightly different on different maps, but he's going to be watching these two paths, and this Overlord is going to be watching this path and the third base. Now, there is this other third base, so you might see a drone come by, but this is the more common location. So this is the one I'm going to be kind of focusing on, but on other maps it might be slightly different. It might not be this line type pattern. Okay, so now we're getting into the meat of this game. I'm doing a kind of off meta build a little bit. I'm skipping the Bane Nest. I wouldn't recommend anybody do this. It's just something I'm playing around with a little bit. So you'll want to get that Bane Nest at like 250 to be totally safe standard in this matchup. But at this point in the game, we're starting to pick up on some clues. We've noticed we're safe, the hatch first, of course, at this point, and we're going to start making some Zerglings. Oops. We're making some Zerglings, and we're going to go scud around with these and just see what's going on. So from this point, we don't really know that they're playing Mutalisk. We haven't picked up on any clues, but we're going to start picking up on some clues. So at this point in the game, it's really, really important that you send some Zerglings across and you start getting some information. Now, we do I suppose, have a little bit of info already. Our opponent has not taken a third, which generally means they're going for some sort of tech play. So right here is when we're going to first pick up on some signals. And it might not say Mutalisk exactly, but there's some nuances here that kind of indicate already that our opponent might be going Mutalisk. So first of all, our opponent has, built some buildings here. He's got a Bane Nest. And this Bane Nest is telling us, that he wants to have some sort of early defense against Lings. And this in combination with no third base is kind of weird, right? Because if he was going to do, there's a bunch of builds you can do as a Zerg on 2-base. You can do a 2-base Roach, you can do a Roach Nidus, and you can do Mutalisk. Maybe there are some other things you can do, but they're not very good. So these are the 3 main ones. And the first 2 of those, the Roach Nidus and the 2-base Roach, are making Roaches. So there's really no reason to have Roaches and Banelings in that position, unless you're going to get a third. So already this is really indicating that he wants to go Mutas. Now this could be maybe like a Bane, all-in or something, but then we see this other building, the Spinecrawler. And the Spinecrawler is suggesting that he wants to be very defensive. In fact, overly defensive, if I say so myself. So this is pretty weird. Both of these basically tell me he's going Mutalisk, although we haven't really confirmed it yet. Another thing is that he's kind of defending his ramp. So there's something he doesn't want us to see up there, which is a very key indicator of Mutalisk. It's a very fast layer. You can see here on the production tab, he just finished that up. So what I want to do here is scout that layer. Now, I'm kind of harassing him a little bit. This is just icing on the cake. We really want to get into the main and see the Mutalisk. So you'll see me kind of save one of these Lings. Honestly, I'm cutting it a little bit close here. I probably should have saved a couple more just to make sure I get this scout 100%. But we come into the main and we see a layer. So at this point, I've seen a Bane Nest, a defensive spire, and a layer. So really big clues. Honestly, this is more than enough to know he's going Mutalisk. But in addition to that, I also saw very fast gas over here. So based on all these clues, it's like 99.999% chance this guy is going Mutalisk. And so we've kind of completed the scouting portion of this game. Now, the next thing we need to figure out is how we want to respond. So we have a faster third base. We should have quite a few more drones than the Mutalisk player, but he's going to catch up because he has a big potential to do damage. He's going to force a lot of defensive units. And so, we're not like extremely far ahead or anything. We need to consolidate and kind of defend our lead. So what we want to do here is grab a couple Spore Crawlers. Eventually we're going to get quite a few, but you want to layer them in slowly. So that's one of the things that I notice, when teaching someone how to defend mutas is they either make like 0 Spore Crawlers or they make like 20. And you do maybe want to work your way up to something like 20, but you want to do it slowly because, if you make all 20 at once, you're going to spend so much money, you're going to be broke. So you'll see me add in here like maybe 3 or 4 Spore Crawlers to start only. And then we'll maybe start adding some more later on after we add in some more drones and stuff. Okay, so I add in 1 Spore. I'm going to put them right in the middle of the middle line. Right in the middle of the mineral line. And we're also going to place 1 in between our bases, sort of to protect the key area where our units are going to sit. So if you don't put 1 here, then what can happen is the mutas can harass your roaches, which we're going to be making here. I'll explain that in a second. And if they can harass your roaches, they can force those to one base or the other, which is actually quite a big problem because if they force your roaches to the 3rd, then their lings can harass your Evo Chamber Roach Warren, and the mutas can maybe kill whatever unit is here, and the lings can sneak in and start killing all your drones and queens. And if they do the reverse, if they force your roaches into the natural, so you can protect this area, then they can go kill your drones or your 3rd. So either way, there's a bit of a problem. And so for that reason, it's important to put your Spore Crawler a 4 spore crawler in between your bases. And we're going to add more as well later on, but for now 4 should be pretty good. We're also making some roaches, which seems weird because we're defending against air units and roaches don't shoot up. But these are going to be pretty crucial actually, because you need some way to defend the Zerglings if your opponent decides to make a bunch. And so you can do this with Banelings or you can do this with roaches, but either way you're going to need some type of unit to defend those those potential Ling counterattacks. Okay, so I'm making, you know, like 8 roaches is a pretty decent number, I think. I also made a spine crawler. I don't think this is necessary, but it's a bit easier with the roaches specifically to defend the Lings, so I made 1. I think this is pretty reasonable actually for anybody that's not GM, just to make an extra spine crawler or 2, assuming you're droning quite a bit. And from this point, we should be pretty safe against the early Mutalisk. Like, where are my opponent's Mutas here? He's just creating them now. So if he runs across, he has 7 Mutalisk. 1 spore crawler can easily defend these, and you should be okay. If your opponent has quite a few Mutalisk already, you can also make some extra queens. Is totally fine, and definitely a good thing to add to help you defend against these Mutalisk with a spore crawler. But whatever you do, don't make Hydralisk. That's the most common reaction I see, and it's totally terrible. It's horrendous because the Mutalisk actually trade pretty decently against Hydras. So do not make Hydras. Hydras are horrendous against Banelings, and your opponent's going to be making, you know, maybe Mutalisk plus Banelings. And so if you make only Hydras, all they have to do is run their Banelings into your Hydralisk, and you're going to get absolutely massacred. So Mutalisk, or Hydralisk rather, are not the correct thing to be making against Mutalisk. What you want to be doing is just defending with a spore and the queens. Now, you do see me adding a Hydralisk Den, but the goal here is not to make the Hydra, it's to get to the lurkers. So as soon as I can, when this Hydra Den is finished, I'm going to add on the lurkers. And we're basically going to make, you know, as few Hydras as we can, or as many lurkers as we want to make. So if you want to make, you know, 10 lurkers, just make 10 Hydras. Don't make 20 Hydras and then make 10 lurkers, because we don't want the Hydras. We're just trying to get as many lurkers as fast as we can. Okay. I'm also adding on a second evolution chamber, and I'm starting to research the +1 attacks. We're also going to be researching the armor, but we'll get that a little bit later. This is actually going to be a pretty core component in being ahead against the Mutalisk players, because they are investing so heavily into the Mutas. They don't really have a lot of money to invest into these upgrades that we're getting. So later on in the game, we're going to be playing very defensive and be behind in economy. And so these are a good way to make sure you're ahead in one facet of the game. In this case, the upgrades. Okay, so now I'm starting to add on another spore crawler, as well as one over here, one over here. I'm basically just going to surround each base with maybe 5 spore crawlers over time, depending on how many Mutalisk my opponent makes. So for now, I have, you know, 2 or 3 per base, not too many, adding them on very, very slowly. There's really no rush, because even right now, these Mutalisks can't even kill 1 spore crawler, especially if you have transfuse with a bunch of queens. So no rush there. He's kind of being annoying here, but it's not a big deal. Just move your spores over, make a couple more. And again, in the meantime, you're teching as quickly as you can into lurkers. So I should be adding on that lurker den fairly soon. I'm also getting the Mutalisks carapace, the Overlord speed, and I think I'm actually doing this pretty late. I think this is one of the mistakes I made in this game, is you should get this upgrade almost as soon as you see that it's Mutalisk, so that you can save all of the Overlords you spread out on the map. So this is probably one of those upgrades you want to get really, really fast, and that can save you some money making these Overlords that I did not save. Harassing my Roach one a little bit. We probably could have placed 1 spore a little closer, so it was a bit harder for him. In fact, yeah, there we go, moving it over. This is much better. And now we have some Hydras out. Man, I really actually delayed this lurker den quite a while. My opponent's actually getting lurkers before me. So definitely we want to get that faster. Preferably we have those like now even. And from this position, we can maybe start looking towards a 4th base at some point. Actually, we're still a bit low on workers, so you're going to see me make workers quite a bit more. We'll work our way up to 66 or even like 74 on 3 bases. You can kind of oversaturate when you're playing against these Mutalisks because it's going to be a bit harder to take your 4th. And you can really turtle up. It's totally fine. I feel like a lot of people are scared to turtle up in this position because you feel like you're giving your opponent lots of freedom to expand and to make tons of drones, etc. But there's a lot of limitations actually with the Mutalisk style. Like you can't make 200 drones, right? Obviously there's some limitation there because you need some supply for mutas and you need some supply for units because if the Roach Hydra player just attacks, then you're easily going to die. So they can't really go past like 100 drones or so. And even though the drone count is going to be, you know, maybe 100 to 70, and that feels like they're ahead, they're not exactly ahead because they are missing out on a lot of upgrades and other investments that we have. Like, for example, we have the Hydra upgrades, we have the +2 missiles, we're going to have the +2 armor starting, and you can see here my opponent literally has none of that because he's invested all his money into mutas. And this guy didn't even invest that much, to be honest. He only made 8 mutas. So if this was, you know, a player committing more to mutas, they might have made 20 mutalisk, and so he actually wouldn't have any bank here at all. So yeah, so there's a lot of advantages besides the economy, and so it's totally fine to be really far behind in economy because later on in the game we're gonna have a much more powerful army. And this is probably something that you guys have seen actually in pro games is, you know, Raynor versus Serral. Raynor will be up like 40 workers and it'll seem like he's kind of crushing Serral, and then all of a sudden it feels like Serral made some sick comeback, but actually he just had way different advantages. He had these huge upgrade advantages and the huge tech advantages. Okay, so at this point we have quite a few Hydras. We're getting our lurkers. We are throwing down our 4th base, and this is a pretty crucial moment. We need to secure this 4th to be at a good position to, you know, have money to play out the macro game. We can't quite max on 3 base very easily, so it's super important that we don't move out on the map just yet. We secure this first. Another very important thing you want to do at this phase is start spreading out your lurkers behind spore crawlers. So you can see here I put a couple lurkers over here behind some spores, and I have some spores over here. And the reason you want the spores around the lurkers is so that if your opponent is using his Mutalisk plus the Overseer, he can't really kill these too easily, at least not without losing a bunch of mutas and perhaps the Overseer as well. You can see him lurking over here, but there's really no way he can jump in. He's going to lose like 3 mutas immediately. You can see 2 going down right there. So spread them out, stay super defensive. It's totally fine. Don't feel like you're behind. We have these huge upgrade advantages and these huge tech advantages. So our position's actually, you know, really, really good here. Unlike what the supply suggests. We actually have a very significant advantage right now. Okay. Next mistake I made is I delayed my hive quite a bit. And you can actually get this hive much, much faster. You want to be working your way into these lurker upgrades as fast as you can, as fast as you feel safe doing. So it would have been a little better if I focused on that. But we're starting to get to a position where we have a pretty scary army. We're at like, what, 30 Hydralisk, and we got quite a few lurkers here. So we're almost ready to push out. You see me actually pushing up to 80 workers now. And the reason we can do this is because this 4th is totally secure. Okay, so hive's on the way. Finished up a roach beat. I believe I pull all my lurkers right now and we start going for some attacks. Now, my opponent actually played a pretty interesting style. He went straight into lurkers pretty quickly here, which is not as common, I think, compared to fast baneling speed. So we're probably pretty close to even. My big advantage here is that I have a significant upgrade lead. Now, if you were playing against someone who was going maybe Mutalisk baneling, this would actually be an army that's really, really hard for them to deal with, and they're probably screwed if they haven't transitioned, honestly. So unless they have maybe Ultralisk or they were transitioning like this guy into lurkers quicker, then you can probably just move across the map and kill them. So again, it might feel like you're very behind against Mutalisk baneling, but this army needs to be killed at some point, right? And so if your opponent's just playing Mutalisik baneling and they try to run those banelings into your lurkers, you burrow them with the speed upgrade, and then all the banelings just die immediately, and your opponent gets completely wrecked. So it's not so clear and clear cut that they can kill you, even though they have a big economy lead. But anyways, so we're pushing out with this army, we're taking some map control, and I'm trying to find some openings. I was teaching a student earlier, and he would get maxed out and then immediately go for like a massive push. And once you get to this part of the game, you want to be very patient. You want to be looking for opportunities, but you don't necessarily need to go for any main attacks or main fights. So here we are, we're looking for some openings, and here we find a free base. So we start going, trying to pick this off. In the meantime, our opponent is trying to find some way to get rid of a bunch of these units he doesn't want, like these Roaches and like these Mutalisks. This isn't actually a bad thing for us because we're pretty high in the workers, and as you lose workers, you get a bit more army supply. So it's not honestly a huge deal that he's killing a bunch of workers. We'll just reposition these spines and get rid of that. Let me go back just a second because we missed something important. My opponent just made a blunder out of nowhere. And so this is the type of thing that you're waiting for in these macro games, is you're not, trying to just go have a fight and, see who wins, because that's very hard to judge unless you're a very experienced player. So what you're trying to do at this stage of the game is get little tiny free wins, and sometimes you get lucky and you get some big free wins. So here you're going to notice my opponent, I think, tried to come burrow his lurkers over here, but he just left them all in the open, and so I immediately get like 10 free lurkers, and basically that is just completely GG right away. And I don't think this is too uncommon, actually. This is, a lot of my games is my opponent just makes some massive blunder in the lower parts of GM. Like, we had a great game this whole time, we were going back and forth, and then and then boom, some massive mistake. So keep that in mind when you're playing these macro games. You're just kind of poking around, seeing if they make a mistake, going further into the game, and when they do make a mistake, just capitalizing on it and really taking advantage of that. So hopefully you guys have a much better idea of how to play against Mutalisk as the Roach player. If you like this guide and you want to see more guides like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I'm doing tons of guides each week, so you'll get notified of those as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.